Welcome back. Where I left off yesterday was, what does repeated inattention to diet combined with inactivity produce? And we talked about obesity. Let's look at the rate of obesity among U.S. adults. Currently, it's about 36%, expected to rise to 50% by the year 2030. What I want to draw your attention to also is this point here. 1976 to 1980, there was a point at which the curve drastically started to increase. And my question was, what happened then? And what happened then may look very familiar to you. It's this. This is the Food Guide Pyramid, given to us by the United States Department of Agriculture in 1980. It was the first time that the government told us what to eat. It puts emphasis on grains as the base, less emphasis on milk, yogurt, and cheese, and meat products and nuts, as those were causing us to be fat. Because you see, at the time, the propaganda was that eating fat makes you fat. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But what I want you to do is I want you to navigate away from me, open up a new tab, and type in the words fat cow syndrome. Okay? Yes, fat cow syndrome. Go over there and open it up in your next tab and come back to me and we'll talk about that. Okay, now that you've done that, eye-opener, astonishing that a metabolic issue in a cow was related to inappropriate diet. And if you clicked on it and you read the whole thing, what you'll see is that the treatment was balanced diet and attention to symptoms. It talked nothing about giving them a pill, doing a weight loss surgery, lifestyle modifications. And so when we go back to this pillar here, fat makes you fat. Anybody remember in the 80s when the fat-free food just tasted awful and you were like, I'll just eat the real thing? Well, the real thing was actually better for you in some instances, because what happened? When they took out the fat, it tasted terrible. And so what they had to replace the fat with was, yes, sugar. And then what happens? The sugar in the body produces an insulin response. And so insulin comes in to take care of the sugar in the bloodstream, and it pumps out and pumps out. And what then is the sugar stored as? Fat. Yes. And so it's actually what they replaced the fat with that's causing some of our obesity epidemic. When we have repeated needs for high levels of insulin into the bloodstream, over time we develop, yes, diabetes. And before I switch this slide, I want you to notice the curve here. The curve of obesity, how similar it is to the curve of diabetes. I understand mathematically that correlation does not equal causation. However, we must make recognition of these data sets. This is a very simple graph. It simply shows that the amount of sugar, as we increased our amount of sugar intake, heart disease, diabetes, and obesity increased. The levelization of the yellow at the heart of the heart disease, probably modern medicine. Thank God for it. It saved my dad. Gave me 3 kids. Saved my husband. I'm so thankful for modern medicine. When we look at the rate of obesity, however, hasn't been affected at all. And understand, obesity is not only affecting us as adults, it's affecting our children. Currently, around 20% of our children are obese. The standard American diet that our children live on, that we as adults sometimes live on, is not doing us well. And so my question for you is, at what point are we going to care enough about our children to care about our own health? Prior Surgeon General Richard Carmona says it beautifully. Because of the increasing rates of obesity, unhealthy eating habits, and physical inactivity, we may see the first generation that will be less healthy and have a shorter life expectancy than their parents. Every parent watching this should read the last section one more time with me. We may see the first generation that will be less healthy and have a shorter life expectancy than their parents. Again, I pose to you the question, you may not care about your own health, but at what point are you going to care enough about your children's health to help yourself, to play with them, to do activities with them, to run with them, to protect them from the street or getting harmed in the street? Or are you just going to settle for sitting on the sidelines and watching? Understand they only repeat what they see. You teach them by example. I would encourage you to consider a new way, a healthy way of teaching them, and in the process helping yourself. That's all I have for you today. Tomorrow we will expand upon the contributors that make us healthy. I look forward to seeing you then. Until then, remember to exhale.